Hi guys, welcome back to 4th grade Math Corner. This is Module 6, Lesson 15. The learning target for this lesson is today I will use decimals to express money. So this is a new topic. In this topic, we're going to talk about how money relates to decimals and how we use decimals to write money. So you should have learned in previous grades about money. Here in this picture is a penny. So you should have learned that a penny is worth 1 cent. And this 1 penny can be used to make dollars or equivalent to dollars. And it would take 100 pennies, 100 of these pennies to make $1. So $1 is equal to 100 pennies. So that means that it's kind of like hundredths, the hundredths place. If we wanted to put these as one of our place value markers or tools, we would put pennies in the hundredths place. So 1 cent or 1 penny is 1 out of the 100 pennies it would take to make $1. If I wanted to write this as a decimal, I would say no dollars. And it's 1/100th, so no tenths and 1/100th. If I wanted to say 7 cents, 7 cents is 7 out of the 100 pennies that it would take to make $1. So it's 7/100ths of a whole dollar. If I wanted to write this as a decimal, I would say no dollars, no tenths, and 7/100ths of $1. We could also do larger numbers like 31 cents. So you can take 31 of these pennies. It still wouldn't equal a whole dollar because a whole dollar needs 100 pennies. So these 31 pennies would be 31/100ths of $1 because it takes 100 to make a $1. So if I wrote these as a decimal, I would say there are no whole dollars, but when I go to the tenths and hundredths, remember it has to end in the hundredths place. And 31 is 2 digits, so I would say 3/10ths and 1/100th, or 31/100ths. Remember those tenths are broken into 10/100ths, and those 10/100ths can be used to make 1/10th. And since we have 30 of those hundredths, that would make 3/10ths, and then there'd be 1/100th left. We could also do this if we had 100 cents, if we had 100 pennies. So remember, 100 pennies would be 100 out of 100. So 100/100ths of $1. Remember, when we have the same number on top and the bottom, it makes a whole, and 100 pennies make a whole. So this would actually be 1 whole dollar. And oftentimes when we write money, we also want to put the tenths and hundredths. So if it's 1 whole dollar, there would be no tenths and no hundredths because we already regrouped them into the dollar. So looking at other types of money, there are also dimes. Dimes are worth 10 cents. So remember, a dime is worth 10 cents. That means to make this dollar, we would need 10 of the dimes. And it would take 10 to make 1 whole dollar. So I would say 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and $1. So since there takes 10 dimes to equal $1, we could call them tenths. This is what the coin we would use on a place value chart to represent the tenths place, because we would need 10 of these dimes to make $1, or 10 tenths to make a whole. If I wanted to think about, if I wanted to think about 10 cents as a decimal, I would say 10 cents is 1 dime. So it would take 1/10, or 10 cents would be 1/10 of $1. If I wanted to write this as a decimal, I would remember I would have to remember that we have wholes, tenths, and hundreds, and I have 1/10. So I would put a 1 in the tenths place, but I want to also tell you that I have no dollars. This, I could leave it as 1/10, but since it's 10 cents, I'm going to put a 0 in the decimal, in the hundreds place. Remember I said up here that oftentimes when we write money, we write our wholes and then dimes and pennies, so we can see how much of each coin we would take. So this would be 10 cents is 1/10 of a dollar, because I would need this would be 1 out of the whole 10 I would need to make the dollar, or it could be written as a decimal as 10 cents or 1/10. Let's think about another, excuse me, another value. Let's say, let's do 80 cents. If I had 80 cents, that would be, if each dime is 10 cents, I would need 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, which means if there took 10 to make a dollar, I would have 8 dimes or 8/10 of the dollar. And we already said that 8/10 would go here in the tenths place. And since it's money, I want to say, whoops, I covered up my decimal. No wholes, and there would be no pennies or 80 cents or 8/10, 80 hundredths. I could make this as pennies, and this would be 80 pennies because it would be 80 cents. Another type of coin is the quarter. A quarter is worth 25 cents. It takes 4 of them to make a dollar. We go 25, 50, 75, a dollar. So I could say that a quarter is 1/4 of a dollar. But when we're talking about decimals, we want to stick with multiples of 10. So remember, decimals are like fractions on a place value chart, and we have the wholes, and then we have tenths, hundredths, and then the next place would be thousandths that you're going to talk about in 5th grade. So fourths don't really work. So we can't do them as fourths in a decimal or a place value chart. So we're going to talk about these as hundredths, because we need 100 cents to make a dollar, right? So let's say we have 25 cents. 25 cents would be, out of 100 cents, 25 out of 100, or 25 hundredths. If I wanted to write that as a decimal, I don't have any wholes because I only have 25 out of 100. But I do have 25 hundredths, so that would be 2/10, 5 hundredths. Remember, I have to write it, or I have to say it as hundreds because it ends in the hundreds place. So I would read this as 25, and it ends in the hundreds place, 25 hundredths. Let's try a harder problem. This is going to be one that's like on your homework. So this says, write $6, 1 dime, 7 pennies, plus $8 and 1/4. We're going to write this as a decimal number. So when I think about these as decimals, I'm going to think about a place value chart. So I know that these are ones. Remember my decimal point. These are my tenths. Whoops, I made it a little small. Let's do tenths. And these are my hundredths. And when I go past the ones place, then I have the tens place, right? So I could do an O, or I could do ones and tenths if you wanted to do that. So now I have $6. So remember, dollars are wholes. So I would put 6 in my wholes. And then I have 1 dime. Remember, dimes are tenths because we need 10 of them to make a whole dollar. And in this number here, I have 1 dime. And then I have 7 pennies. So I'm going to put pennies in the hundreds because remember, it takes 100 pennies to make a dollar. So if I wrote this as a decimal, I would write $6.17 or $6.17. I want to add it, because that's my symbol, to $8. So I'm going to put it in the 1 holes, $8 and 1 quarter. So remember we said quarters are worth 25 cents or 25 hundredths. So I would write 25 and end it here in the hundredths place. I need my decimal to separate my wholes from my parts. And now I just want to add these together. So we know that if we line up places on a place value chart, we can just put those places together. So I'm going to pretend like this is my addition chart, and I'm going to add, starting with the smallest value, 7 plus 5. I'm going to use this as my equal sign. So 7 plus 5 is 12. Remember, I can't have 12 in the hundredths place. So I'm going to put my 2, and I'm going to regroup my 10 hundredths into 1/10. So now I'm going to just regroup it up there. Now I'm going to add my tenths. 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 1 more is 4. Put my 4. I bring down my decimal because remember these are, remember these are parts and these are wholes, and I need my decimal to separate them. So now I'm going to add, now I'm going to add my 6 plus my 8, and I know that 8 plus 6 is 14. And I'm going to have, I can't put 14 in one place, so I'm going to regroup the 10 over to the tens place and just write it. I could put it up here and then add it. So I know that $6, 1 dime and 7 pennies plus $8 and 1 quarter would be $14.42. And this is the symbol for dollars or money. Or I could say it is 14 and 42 hundredths because they end in the hundredths place. Let us know if you need any help.